Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Perkenalkan, nama saya Gabriel Ahwil dengan NIM 131239198. Hari ini saya akan membongkar uh, handheld mini fan yang saya beli dari Ace Hardware. Dan marilah kita mulai. Pertama kita demonstrasi bagaimana cara kerja fan itu. Cara kerja fan itu ketika kita colokkan dengan suatu power source, yaitu karena saya pakai USB fan, karena kan handheld, dan biasanya itu USB fan. Kalau kita misalkan nyalakan powernya, dan kita nyalakan power source-nya, dia akan berputar, dan ini akan membuat suatu arus udara, sehingga kita dapat menyebutkan ini sebuah fan. Nah, setelah demonstrasi bahwa ini bahannya jalan, marilah kita disassembly. Yang saya gunakan yaitu sekarang ialah dengan skru positif PH 1 kali 75 mm. Adalah kita disassembly. Memiliki tiga perangkat, yaitu pertama ini covernya, yang kedua fan-nya, yang ketiga ialah motornya. Dan kalau dilihat dari motornya, dari sini ada pusat positif dan juga pusat negatif, dan ini yang menjalankan simple circuitnya. Alright, now that we have disassembled the fan, right now I will explain what are the components usage for. The first thing is the penutup or the closure. What the closure or the penutup does is that it prevents people from touching the blades, because the blades are sharp. Because keep in mind, the blades are rotating. If you see the blades are quite sharp. It is made out of metal. When it is spinning, due to the gaps, if you put your hands, you can cut off your fingers. So that's the first usage, and the second usage is to stabilize the structure, because as you can see, the structure here is pretty light. So if you close that, you add mass, so you shift the center of mass, so meaning that it creates a much more stable creates a stabler structure, because with more mass, the center of mass will be much more lower, which means that it is far more stable than just simply this. Because let's say if I push this with the screws, it wouldn't fall down, but if I push this only, it will fall down. So that's the two usage. Now the second one is the fan. The fan, if you look at the front, you might not see it much, because it looks simply as a polygon, if you want to say that. But if you look at the side profile, you see that there are curves, right? There are curves. The curves here, the usage of the curves is to concentrate airflow, because when the motor rotates, it will create angular velocity, right? Now, so when air goes in, it is concentrated by the fan, so it will blow on your face. So because the rotation is this way, right? So when air flows, it will actually concentrate. It will concentrate it will concentrate the air, and it will blow on your face, making it cooler, right? So that's the usage of the fan. Now the second one, and the third one is the motor. The usage of the motor is to create rotation, so that airflow can be concentrated by the fan. That's the usage of the motor. So if we try to plug it in the power source, let's say a power bank, and turn it on, it will spin. And if you try to touch it, you can see that the rotation is actually clockwise. I'm sorry, from this point of view is counterclockwise, but from here, so yeah, depending on your point of view, counterclockwise or clockwise, but it's rotating this way, so your torque or your force that is directed through it will be that way. which means when you connect it to the blades, the air is going that way. Now that we've discussed about the basics function of the the internal parts, now let's discuss about the function, not the function, on how the motor works. So the way the motor works is using this diagram. So the motor is connected parallel. Why parallel? So that the motor will have the same voltage as the power source. Because keep in mind, the voltage in the power source are is the same if the circuit is in parallel. This is the motor, this is the capacitor, this is the switch, and this is the power source. There are many mechanical engineering subjects that are related to mini fans, the way they work and the production itself. So, firstly, it is quite obvious that the mechanical engineering subjects that is required to make a mini fan is fluid mechanics, because of course if you look at the picture here you can see that there's an airflow coming through the blades, because of course when the blade rotates it creates an airflow, and that airflow is what makes you cool down. The second material sorry, not material. I'm sorry, the second subject that is related to mechanical engineering is the mechanics of material. So if you look at the shafts of the fan, they actually experiences torsional load. I'm sorry, yeah, torsional load, which means that there is stress there. So when we talk about stress analysis, we're talking about mechanics of materials. The third one is actually simple circuitry, or basically physics 2, which we learn in semester 1, I'm sorry, semester 2, because we learn about the circuits of the fans. And lastly, it is the statics, because of course the fan needs to be stable, so it must be in a statical position. The process of making minifans starts in an industry as you seen above. It's quite big, it's quite spacious, and there's a lot of machines. So now the first step of making a mini fan is they need to make the motors first, the DC motors first. So they first have to wind the coils, and for smaller DC motors, maybe they have their own industries for that, but that's a separate discussion. Once done making the DC motors, they have to make the circuit boards, because of course the motors won't run wouldn't run without commands, right? So they need to have they need to have the command center, which of course it is the circuit board. The circuit board is created using a circuit board machine, as you seen above. Once done, they now created the base, because now the motor and because the motor section, which is the motor and the circuit board, is done. Now the next step is to create the base and of course the structure itself. To make that, usually they use plastic. So do they do that? They melted plastic pellets and then they molded it and then they cast it or mold it into their specific shapes. For metals, they need to reshape it. For metal fans, they have a different process by itself, because of course you have to cast the fan shape. Yeah. So that's the manufacturing process. Now that we have discussed about the functions and how the things works and so on, let us reassemble it again and prove that it still works. So I'll have my power source here for later usage. So now let us reassemble it. So firstly, we have to close it and up. We put it on the now it's on the fan. Make sure that it's not switch. Not yet, not yet. Right, now that it is done, let us test it with the power source and see if it still works. Yes. Okay.